Hello everyone, welcome back to Learn English Through Stories. Have you ever met someone who seemed too good to be true? Someone who said all the right things and smiled all the right smiles. And yet something deep inside you whispered, "Be careful. That little voice is older than you think." It goes back to a story told thousands of years ago. A story about a wolf and a sheepskin and a secret that cost lives. Let me take you there. The village sat in a valley between two green hills. Stone houses with thatched roofs clustered together like old friends. Smoke rose from chimneys every morning and evening. Children ran barefoot through dusty paths laughing and shouting. And just outside the village on the grassy slopes a flock of sheep grazed all day long. These sheep were the heart of the village. Their wool made warm coats for winter. Their milk made cheese that sat on every table. Their lambs brought joy each spring when the snow melted away. Watching over them was an old shepherd named Elias. Elias had a face carved by wind and sun. His hands were rough but gentle with the animals. And he had two dogs, black and white shadows that never left his side. Now in the dark forest beyond the hills lived a wolf. Not just any wolf. This wolf was clever and patient and utterly without mercy. He had watched the flock for months. He knew every sheep by sight. He knew the fat ones and the slow ones and the ones that wandered too far. But he also knew the shepherd never slept deeply. He knew the dogs heard every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs. The wolf had tried everything. He crept through tall grass at dawn. He hid behind boulders at dusk. He even tried digging under the wooden fence one moonless night. Every time the dogs caught his scent and drove him back into the trees. Every time he returned to his cold den hungry and humiliated. His ribs began to show through his thick gray fur. His eyes grew sharper and more desperate. One afternoon he was walking along a rocky ridge far from the village. The wind was howling and the sky was gray with coming rain. He was thinking about giving up and moving to another valley. Then he saw something white caught on a thorny bush. At first he thought it was just a scrap of cloud that had fallen to earth. But when he got closer he realized what it was. A sheepskin. A whole sheepskin. It must have belonged to a sheep that died during the winter. The wool was dirty and matted, but it was complete. The wolf stared at that sheepskin for a long time. Rain began to fall cold and sharp against his nose. But he did not move. His mind was spinning like a whirlpool. He remembered stories his mother told him long ago. Stories about wolves who tricked their prey. Stories about disguises and deception and patience. He picked up the sheepskin carefully in his jaws. It was heavier than he expected. The smell of sheep was strong, almost overwhelming. He carried it back to his den and laid it out on the stone floor. That night he did not sleep. He paced and planned and imagined every step. When the first gray light of morning crept into the forest, he made his move. He draped the sheepskin over his back. It hung loose and awkward at first. He shook his body until it settled into place. The wool covered his sharp spine and his powerful shoulders. It covered his long gray snout and his pointed ears. Only his eyes remained uncovered. Yellow eyes that glowed like dying embers. He walked to a puddle left by the rain. And he looked at himself. What he saw made his heart beat faster. He did not see a wolf. He saw a sheep. A large sheep, yes, but a sheep nonetheless. The disguise was not perfect up close. But from a distance in the middle of a moving flock, it might just work. He waited until late afternoon when the sheep were lazy and full from grazing. The sun hung low and golden, making long shadows across the grass. The wolf walked slowly down from the hills toward the flock. Every step felt like a lifetime. His paws pressed into soft earth and tall grass. He kept his head low like a sheep looking for tender shoots. He made his body look heavy and slow and harmless. The first sheep that saw him lifted its head for a moment. The wolf held his breath. His heart pounded so loud he was sure the whole valley could hear it. The sheep blinked and went back to chewing grass. The wolf took another step. Then another. Soon he was standing among them, surrounded by woolly bodies and the soft sounds of grazing. The smell was overwhelming now. Sheep smell and grass smell and earth smell all mixed together. One of the dogs trotted past him close enough to touch. The wolf did not move a single muscle. The dog sniffed the air. Its ears twitched. The wolf could see the confusion in the animal's eyes. Something is not right, the dog seemed to think. But the sheepskin did its work. The dog sneezed and walked away toward the shepherd. The wolf exhaled slowly. He had passed the first test. A young lamb came up beside him. It was small and white and completely trusting. It pressed against his side for warmth. The wolf felt the lamb's heartbeat against his ribs. He felt its soft wool against his own borrowed wool. And for one strange moment he almost felt something like affection. But then his stomach cramped with hunger. And he remembered why he was there. That night when the shepherd led the flock back to the wooden fold, the wolf went with them. He walked in the middle of the group, surrounded by bodies and noise. The shepherd counted each sheep as they passed through the gate. 71, 72, 73. The wolf passed through like a ghost. The gate closed behind him. He was inside. The fold was a large pen made of wooden posts and rails. The sheep settled down on the straw bedding. They murmured and bleated softly to each other. The wolf found a dark corner and lay down. He could hear the shepherd's footsteps outside. He could hear the man talking to his dogs. He could smell smoke from the chimney of the stone house nearby. And he waited. Patience was the only thing that mattered now. If he moved too soon, everything would be ruined. He waited until the sounds outside grew quiet. Until the only noise was the breathing of sleeping sheep. Then he made his move. A sheep near the edge of the group was sleeping alone. It was not young or old, just a plain ordinary sheep. The wolf crept toward it on silent paws. He moved like a shadow across the straw. His eyes never blinked. The sheep did not stir. In one quick motion it was over. The sheep never made a sound. The wolf ate for the first time in weeks. Real food, warm and filling. When he finished, he licked his jaws clean. He dragged what was left into the corner and covered it with straw. Then he lay down and slept. In the morning the shepherd came out and counted his sheep again. He counted once and frowned. He counted again. 73, he said to himself. But he could have sworn he had 74 yesterday. He scratched his gray beard and looked around the fold. Everything seemed normal. The sheep were calm and the straw was undisturbed. He shook his head. Getting old, he muttered. His eyesight was not what it used to be. His memory played tricks on him sometimes. He called to his dogs and led the flock out to the pasture. The wolf went with them. That day he walked among the sheep under the open sky. He grazed on grass like the others. He drank from the stream when they drank. He moved when they moved and rested when they rested. No one looked at him twice. That night he took another sheep. And the next night another. The shepherd counted his flock every morning. And every morning the number was smaller. 71. 68. 65. He began to worry. He checked the fence for holes and found none. He walked the perimeter of the pasture looking for tracks. But the wolf was careful. He never left signs. He was becoming one of them. The other sheep accepted him completely now. They did not see the yellow in his eyes. They did not notice that his body was growing heavier while theirs grew light. The lamb that had pressed against him on the first day followed him everywhere. It thought he was its mother. The wolf let it follow. He even nuzzled it sometimes. Not out of affection, but because it made him look more real. One afternoon the shepherd's son came to visit. He was a young man, strong and sharp-eyed. He had grown up with these sheep and knew every one by name. He walked among the flock, running his hands through their wool. Then he stopped. His hand was resting on the wolf's back. He felt the coarse wool of the sheepskin. But underneath he felt something hard. Something that was not sheep. The wolf stayed perfectly still. The young man looked at the sheep more closely. It was too big, he thought. Its legs were too long and its body too lean under all that wool. And the way it stood was wrong. It stood like an animal ready to run or to fight. Not like a sheep at all. He walked to his father. "There is something strange about the big one," he said. The old shepherd squinted across the field. "Which one?" "The one standing alone near the rocks." The old man looked for a long moment. He saw a large sheep with thick wool. He saw it chewing grass peacefully. "You worry too much," he told his son. "That one has always been big. He is just a healthy animal." The young man was not convinced. But he respected his father and said nothing more. He left that evening with doubt still heavy in his chest. The wolf watched him go. For the first time he felt a flicker of fear. He had been seen. Really seen. But the danger passed. The young man did not return. And the wolf grew bolder than ever. He began to believe he was untouchable. He began to believe the sheepskin made him invincible. He stopped being so careful. He took sheep from the center of the flock instead of the edges. He left small signs that a more watchful eye might have noticed. But the old shepherd was tired and his eyes were weak. He trusted what he saw on the surface. And that trust was his undoing. Then came the evening that changed everything. The sky was deep orange and purple like a bruise spreading across the horizon. The shepherd stood at the door of his stone house and looked toward the fold. He was hungry for something more than bread and cheese. It had been weeks since he had tasted good mutton. He had been saving the biggest sheep for a special occasion. But tonight felt like the right night. He took his sharpest knife from a wooden block. He tested the edge with his thumb. It was keen enough to split a hair. He walked across the dark yard to the wooden gate. His boots crunched on the gravel path. The dogs followed him, but he waved them back. "Stay," he said. This was a job for a man alone. He unlatched the gate and stepped inside. The sheep stirred and murmured. The smell of wool and straw filled his nose. He walked slowly through the flock. His eyes searched for the largest shape. The one he had been feeding in his mind for this very meal. And there it was. In the corner. The biggest sheep he had ever raised. It was facing away from him, its back a mountain of thick wool. He reached out and grabbed a handful of that wool. The sheep did not resist. It stood perfectly still. Strange, the shepherd thought. Most sheep would try to pull away. He pulled harder and turned the animal toward him. He raised his knife. The blade caught the last light of the sunset. And then he saw the eyes. Yellow eyes. Not the soft brown eyes of a sheep. Yellow eyes with black slits that stared back without fear. The shepherd's breath caught in his throat. For a long, terrible moment neither of them moved. The man and the wolf looked at each other across the blade. The shepherd saw everything in that gaze. The missing sheep. The strange behavior. The warning from his son. The disguise that had fooled him for so long. His hand trembled but did not lower the knife. The wolf snarled. The sound was low and rumbling like distant thunder. It tried to twist away. But the shepherd had spent his whole life handling animals. His grip was iron. The struggle was brief. When it was over, the shepherd stood breathing hard. The sheepskin had fallen to the straw. Underneath was the gray fur and lean body of a wolf. A wolf that had lived among them for weeks. A wolf that had eaten his flock from the inside. The shepherd picked up the sheepskin. It was dirty now and torn. He walked outside into the cool night air. He nailed that sheepskin to a post by the road, high up where everyone could see it. A warning to himself and to everyone who passed. The next morning travelers saw it and asked what happened. And the shepherd told them the story. Every time he told it, he ended with the same words. Look beyond the wool. The wolf is always underneath. This story has been told for thousands of years. It traveled from ancient Greece to Rome. From Rome to the far corners of the world. Every culture has a version of it. Because every culture knows this truth. The most dangerous enemy is the one you welcome inside. The one who looks like you, talks like you, eats beside you. And all the while waits for the moment you look away. You have probably met a wolf in sheep's clothing. Maybe it was a friend who shared your secrets with others. Maybe it was a coworker who smiled at you while taking credit for your work. Maybe it was someone you dated who said I love you but meant I want something from you. The signs were there. You probably felt them in your gut. That little prickle of doubt. That moment when their story did not quite add up. That flash of something cold behind their warm smile. But you ignored it because you wanted to believe. You wanted the wool to be real. This story is not telling you to be suspicious of everyone. It is not telling you to build walls so high no one can enter. It is telling you something much simpler. Pay attention. Trust what people do more than what they say. And when your gut whispers that something is wrong, listen. Listen hard. Because the wolf is patient. The wolf knows how to wait. The wolf knows that most people only look at the surface. But you are not most people. Not anymore. Now you know the story. Now you have seen how it ends. So keep your eyes open. Not with fear. With clarity. The world is full of good people. Warm, honest, kind people who will never hurt you. But here and there among the flock, quiet and patient and hidden under borrowed wool, there is always a wolf. And now you know how to spot one. That is the story for today. The phrase is a wolf in sheep's clothing. It describes a person who pretends to be gentle or harmless. but underneath they are dangerous and waiting to do harm. You can use it in everyday conversation. Watch out for him, he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. She seemed so nice, but it was all an act, a real wolf in sheep's clothing. I almost trusted him with my money until I saw the wolf under the wool. Think about this phrase this week. Think about the times you have seen it in your own life. Maybe in a movie or a book or the news. Or maybe in someone you once knew. Learning English is not just about words and grammar. It is about stories that help you understand people. Because language is how we connect. And stories are how we remember. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for listening to this old tale made new again. If this story gave you something to think about, something to feel, then share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button so others can find it too. And come back for the next story. I will be here waiting. With another tale and another phrase. Until then, take care of yourself. Keep your eyes sharp and your heart open. And watch out for wolves.
能以非母语者的身份专注学习到现在，这本身就是很棒的进步。真诚感谢你的观看。如果你觉得本期内容实用，点赞或留言让我知道你的想法，这对我持续创作非常重要。我们下期见。